not everyone are suited for being a freelancer. Not everyone are suited of looking at your wallet and see a little fly coming out of it instead of money. and relying on that, it's going to fix, it's going to be good in the end, so to say. Because sometimes you are in that situation.
Mikael Olsson is a freelance media and broadcasting consultant who's been working predominantly with analog audio and film for the past 40 years. Mikael, through his company MOLB, has seen and been part of some of the most significant changes in the way we consume media. I met Mikael when I first moved to Sweden 10 years ago and began working as an acoustic engineer. In today's interview, Mikael candidly and humorously shares his perspectives on freelancing, the future of audio and film, and most significantly, how the learning never stops. This episode is an insight into technological change, keeping yourself relevant in your field, and the realities of freelancing in the media and broadcast industry. Welcome to the 99 Projects podcast, a weekly show that deep dives into creative and enterprising projects. Each week we'll uncover the people and stories behind intriguing ventures and discuss the results, outcomes, and lessons learned. You can find more information and sign up to our newsletter on our website, 99projectspodcast.com. Enjoy the show. Do you mind introducing yourself?
My name is Mikael Olsson. I'm born and raised in Stockholm, and I am a consultant within audio and video media. Do you want my whole life story? So I've been in broadcasting, I would say, most of the time from already early 1980s. I did a little bit of work within media before that also, but it led to a job I started at a local radio station in Stockholm, national radio, but local. Ended there after 9 years, went to commercial television, ended that, went to back to Swedish national television, went back to commercial television, starting as an audio engineer, went from audio engineering to planning and project engineering, and then I ended my employment at Swedish television and started to freelance as a project engineer, leading up to being a project manager and within commercial television in Sweden, mainly or only TV4, I would say. I had a brief period around the millennium as a so-called key account manager, which I didn't really thought I fitted for, so I ended that after my trial period of 6 months. So since 1997, I've run my own business and survived. I'm still learning things. I want to learn new things. I like to take on the things a little bit on the edge of my knowledge, and which I have to study a little bit and learn. I'm also can say as a consultant, I can do almost anything, which is good in one way, bad in another, because I'm not an expert in any field. I'm a little bit of jack of all trade. So I know a little bit about project management, obviously, about management as a whole, procurement, audio engineering, acoustics, also video engineering, archiving, IT, whatever I pick up.
Yeah. Anything that you need to learn, you can learn it.
Yeah, within limits. Yeah. Yes.
Can you tell me what attracted you to the industry?
Yeah, as a teenager, I was an audio nerd. In every sense. I went into radio shops and during lunch breaks in school and pressed eject buttons on all cassette decks to see what ejected the cassette in the most coolest way. And that must be a very good equipment. You know, at that level, as teenagers are impressed of the more or less the wrong thing. But that led me to, I started to study civil engineering at KTH in Sweden, which is the Royal Technical High School in Stockholm, or university. And I started to work within the student union there with audio and video and film and thing, or not video, film rather. And from there, I started to do a little bit of freelancing, and decided to drop my studies and become an audio engineer. I thought that was fun. Also been very interested in music, or at least I think so. So music and audio kind of go together a little bit.
What made you decide to work for yourself rather than someone else, ultimately?
I was on leave from one employment to be in a large project for 18 months or 20 months. And when that period was coming to an end, this project was not finished. So I resigned from my employment to be able to finish this work because I thought this project because I thought that was more fun than the previous employment I had. And then I went to my boss at this TV station and please employ me because I now resigned from my old work. And he said, no, this is a time-limited project, and after that, the project group will disappear. But you can, if you want to, you can start invoicing. That was the fall of '96. So from New Year '97, I started to invoicing and became my own. And I really liked it. I had the company already, or I was self-employed and been doing freelance work since early 80s, something like that. And that was a very long name, which I later, like 12 years ago, shortened to MOLB, MOLB, which is just a
abbreviation.
Yeah, abbreviation of Mikael Olsson, ljud och bild, sound and vision.
Yeah.
Which was a little bit too long.
Do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
I have not considered myself being an entrepreneur, but people tell me I am an entrepreneur. The definition as an entrepreneur for me is someone who takes on new challenges. And in that sense, I am an entrepreneur, but it's also a challenge that's challenges that produces something. And if I'm a project manager, I'm not responsible for I'm not the creative person in that sense. I think an entrepreneur should be creative, thinking outside the box or whatever you want to call it. And maybe I am, but it's still a little bit in the background and helping others. I'm helping companies with my experience and my time to work, my work hours, when they don't have the resources themselves, really. But they have the knowledge, often at least have the knowledge. So I step in to kind of help them organizing these knowledges and create something, whatever it can be.
Did you have a mentor going into starting your own business or becoming self-employed, or did you just jump in and learn as you went along?
I had it wasn't an employment, but I worked for a Swedish film mixer. He had his own mix studio for mixing 16 millimeter films, like company things, information movies or whatever it was. And he taught me a little bit, or at least I got an insight of how it was. My father was a dentist. He ran his own dentist practice, so that is sort of freelancing too. So, but it wasn't a life I dreamt of. But it was also that my first big employment was in 9 years, and ended up with me being head of an audio department of this local radio station. And I was a little bit, I wouldn't say fed up with being the boss, but I wanted to know more about audio. I wanted to try. I've done a lot of things during these 9 years. So I went to television, for instance, and then I happened to end up at a workplace that had very bad bosses. So, the old saying, you shouldn't try to find a good company to work, or you should try to find the good boss that helps you, to inspires you. I didn't find that. But I find it in small projects here and there. So as a freelancer, I thought I could pick and choose instead of being dependent on the same person all the time. if it's the right person, that's marvelous. But if it's the wrong person, that's your boss, then you will, I don't know, you won't develop your knowledge at all.
Yeah, definitely. I like how you saw that you weren't learning something in the particular situation that you were in, and then figured out a way to get that knowledge or get that experience or be able to work with those types of people in your own way.
Every project you learn something new, and you bring that with you to next project as experience and so on. So, and if you work with the same persons and in the same company all the time, yes, you will still learn, but I think swapping whoever assigns me for a job to have several of them, you will that will widen your the intake of knowledge or at least the experience.
Yeah, definitely. So, what skills, knowledge, or traits do you think are essential for someone working as an audio consultant today?
That's a very wide question, and a very good question. I have to think a little bit. Of course, you need to be very interested in audio as such. Not only have a hi-fi thing at home, but it helps to start there somewhere. Being interested in whatever the audio engineering results in, if it's music, if it's movie, if it's television, radio, whatever, you need to be interested. So a little bit interest in bits and pieces. I mean, engineering bits and pieces. Bolts and nuts, and as we say in Sweden, maybe might help. That it means at least is my background a little bit. I'm a typical engineer at that in that sense, but also you need to be. It's easier to be extrovert than introvert in that sense. Because you're meeting new people. Yeah. And you need to come into good terms with them in a short time. A little bit of business mind could help. It would certainly have helped me much more if I had a little bit of business mind. But that has never been my really purpose to make more money. So that's why I haven't grown out of being. I started as self-employed, and now I have a limited company, but still only me working with it is limited company. Yeah. If I need, I can bring in people. So I brought in the acoustic in Mikael Olsson, for instance, from whom I rent office space, and other friends who I bring in if I need some expertise in something. And I think that's how very many freelancers do work. You need a network of people that has other skills or knowledge than yourself. It's a good thing to also talk with them about this, like running a business or how you treat customers or how you write and contract or and so on and so forth. And then you need to follow a little bit what in your field. You have to follow a little bit on development, what's happening. I can't say I do that with everything because now I have so many fields that I'm working within. So it's hard.
I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. There's a lot of great information from Mikael here. You can find a summary of the key points on the blog post for this episode at our website, 99projectspodcast.com. Next, Mikael breaks down a typical type of project he's hired for and how people find him. He also answers where he thinks the biggest opportunities are for media consultants, as well as advice for people looking to become a freelancer in audio or film. I understand that no two projects are the same, but how would you approach a typical project, if you can sort of generalize that?
A typical project it's a change that needs to be done at somewhere, and we're talking about some technical thingy that needs to be changed. They need to buy a new equipment, they need to change a new equipment, or they need to go into a new field or something. Then they could bring in a person like me and they have a goal which they set up, if we buy this piece of equipment, we will be more efficient and make more money. The project's goal will not be for them to make more money. The project's goal is to change the equipment to something more efficient. And generally, you need to do a bit of a pre-study to first to decide exactly what is it that the project should do, what is the change, and how do you measure the results. So you can measure the workload before, and you can measure the workload afterward, for instance, as an example. And before you start a project, you need to decide these goals of the project. What should the project fulfill, and how should the customer measure the results? Well, then you decide. So we need to buy this and this, and you go out maybe and swipe the market to see what products would fit into this, and you ask for a quotation maybe. And then a procurement, you buy a piece of equipment, and you organize the whole swap or the whole installation, and also deployment and training of the personnel. And if it's the same personnel that working with it, you need to encourage them to learn a new thing. You need to bring them in as early as possible as experts in the field of what they're working within, but also as an input to what specification you want to set up for choosing a new equipment. So that would be, as a project manager, a typical job I do, mostly within television, I would say. But also in some other fields. So, and it could be something that takes a few months, or it could be something that takes a few years. And it's very seldom full time, because questions have to go around a little bit in people's heads and so on. I'm a true believer in letting a lot of people say what they think, how they see the thing, what their hopes for the future. And maybe you can't fulfill all their wishes, but they can bring forward their thoughts. And then you can tell them, well, yep, we listened to you, but what you said was too expensive. We did this instead, and so on. Because if you don't let people say what they think, they start thinking that no one cares about me. And then you have a bad working moral, more or less. No one cares about me, so why should I care about them, and so on. But if you bring in people in the planning and so on, you get more involved. And that's, at least I think, when I was employed, I thought I wanted everyone to listen to me, because of course I knew best. That's my big problem. I'm a bit of Mr. Know-it-all. I've been worse than I am today, but a little bit I learned also on that side.
Yeah, I mean, even that you bring it up suggests that you are aware of it, which is the first step.
Yeah. Sometimes you get to do a pre-study, but not maybe running the project. And sometimes someone else has done the pre-study and you run the project. Or sometimes they just say, we have bought this, please organize the swap or the installation or the training or something like that.
So usually people come to you when they've got a specific technical problem. Are they usually referred to you, or is it through word of mouth because you've got some reputation in the industry? How do clients usually find you?
Mostly through person to person, I would say. I've done a bit of publishing a lot on LinkedIn, because it's not always easy to get jobs. And if you come over a certain age, you notice that some people are 40 years younger than you. And why should they know about me? Yeah. They very seldom do know about me. So to get my name out there somewhere, and also for old customers not to forget about me, I do publish stories and things and on LinkedIn. I tried also a little bit on Facebook, but I thought it was a little bit too complicated, and also Instagram also there. I should maybe be everywhere, but I think that a lot of my customers are on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Being a professional network, social media, more than having kittens and sunsets all the time.
Yeah, no, I think it's good to be focusing your marketing in the place where your customers are going to be.
Yeah. And why I started with publishing this was because I actually went to a consultant he's a marketing consultant, like your small company's marketing department. I wanted him to make a lot of phone calls. I wanted to go to archives, museums and libraries because I knew that they have a lot of audiovisual archives that needs to be saved, because if they are on magnetic tape, you won't be able to play them in like 10, 15, 20 years or something like that. But I didn't like doing what's called in marketing cold calls.
Yeah.
Calling a head of a museum and say, hi, do you know that you have a problem and I can solve it or whatever? Because, no, I'm not good at that. But he didn't have any problem with that. He didn't have time to do much of that because then he decided to go back to his old employment. So we ended up our relationship. But before that, he told me a lot about the advantages with LinkedIn and how you work within planning and so on. So I've been doing that for like almost 5 years. And at that time, my customer base was shrinking very quickly. And I thought, I don't want to stop working. I want to continue working. So I wanted to find a new customer base within, as I say, libraries and archives. But I didn't know the persons, and they are not engineers, so I didn't know them from my network. What happened was that luckily during the pandemic, things happened anyway that gave me a little jobs here and there. From last year, suddenly my old customers came back and they told me that they've been thinking, oh, how should we be able to do this? And then someone suddenly said, but hang on, remember Mikael who used to work for us? And they called me, and I hope it was my presence on the social media that made them remember me. I know that in the freelance world, if you're out of business or you go abroad, you're away from the business for like 6 months or a year, the customers forget about you because there's always another one they can call.
Yeah.
And they call the same person over and over again till they are fed up with that person or whatever. And so I'm happy that they called again.
What motivates or inspires you today about being part of the audio industry?
It's my curiosity. I've been an audio engineer. I've been doing video editing, audio editing, music recordings, radio, television productions, you name it, but only in the analog world. Well, sometimes it's been digital, but I never worked with a digital audio workstation and DAW, for instance. And I haven't worked with audio or video over network, like over IP, like Dante in audio, for instance, or things like that. So there are things I like to know more about, because I know that in a couple of years, no one will pull an XLR cable and no one will pull a BNC cable for video. It will only be network cables. So I must learn it. But I think that is interesting. And during my years from early 80s to like 40 years, it's been such a development within media production and transmission or broadcasting. Everything is enormous, really.
Yeah. How have you managed your reputation and how do you maintain that?
I'm not thinking in those terms. I trust my reputation in one way. I've been working with a lot of my customers through the years when they started in the company and when they rised through the ranks, so to say. So it's my network I work with in every sense. And sometimes I call them to get answers for things, and yeah, I just trust that it works.
Yeah. Based on the projects that you've worked with over the past years, where do you see the biggest opportunities for an audio professional? What sort of problems are coming up at the moment and you can foresee coming up in the near future?
one change that has already come up is that a lot of production companies, television companies, radio companies, they don't employ people anymore, engineers. They rely on freelancers much more. And not everyone are suited for being a freelancer. Not everyone are suited of looking at your wallet and see a little fly coming out of it instead of money. and relying on that, it's going to fix, it's going to be good in the end, so to say. Because sometimes you are in that situation. And I think that is, you also with having freelancers instead of employed personnel is getting around union rules and union contracts, whatever it's called, meaning that the freelancers have to work maybe longer hours, taking bigger risks and things, and that's not a good thing. And it happens with a lot of it. It's like photographers and builders, and everyone are freelancers nowadays. In some countries that has been like that. Like in the UK, it's been like that since the Iron Lady, I think, since the 80s more or less. And you're more cautious about what you say to a customer than what you can actually be. You can be more free spoken, and if you are employed, maybe.
Yeah.
So that is a change that already happened, but it's increasing in one way or another. So on the other hand, that gives you more opportunities, and if you think you're suited for it, for that kind of life, you can, because the freelancers or the self-employed, you rule your own day, you rule over your own hours, over your own vacations. If I really count how many days I actually take off for being off work, it's much more than the few weeks of vacation that a normal employed person have, even though we have quite a lot in Sweden.
Yeah.
It's a more free way of working.
And how about opportunities in the industry? Do you have any signals that are presenting opportunities to you now? Like you said, for example, with the magnetic tape, like these things need to be saved now.
That is a knowledge that is so old and old-fashioned that the knowledge is now dying out. But I don't, and it's going to be a period of time, a time slot of 20 years maybe, when all these archives on magnetic tapes, either it's video or audio or whatever, it needs to be saved. And that's a very limited time. You don't plan your future for a 20 years time slot, I would say. But if I would look at it, I think, for instance, that AI, artificial intelligence within media production or media distribution is very interesting, and it's something that will be very common and a big thing, bigger than it is already big, of course, but I mean bigger than today.
Yeah.
And also this self-made productions, video productions like influencers and so on, using video and audio, like pods, for instance. Or is something I think will be increasing more and more, actually. And the third thing is, of course, IT, because media industry was used to be, as I said, microphone XLR cables and cameras and BNC cables, and it's going to be an IP number on the microphone and an IP number on your ears, more or less, and the rest in between is network and internet or whatever.
Devices like sensors and the Internet of Things, like connected devices that don't need to have the same sort of structure or setup as you do at the moment.
Yeah. It's. I mean, the infrastructure that we've been having for the last. Well, I think if we could talk about digital video and audio, we had it for like 25, 30 years. And before that, we have analog video and audio for about 50 years.
Yeah.
But now we will have digital audio and video within IP. It's already started. And in 10 years' time, I think that's 10 to 20 years, that will totally rule production and distribution, which is not so at the moment yet.
Yeah.
because it costs a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a typical technological change that will need consultants like me to I don't need to be an expert in the new technology, but I need to know how you transfer the infrastructure from one system to another.
Yeah, the transformation.
The transformation.
What are the steps that you would take were you to start from scratch again today?
I remember one thing I should have mentioned earlier. That's your partner. You need to have forgiving partner in one way, because sometimes you need to work 20 hours a day, and some other times you will sleep in till 11 o'clock in the morning because you don't need to go to work while he or she needs to go to work. And you need to have an understanding or agreement, or both being entrepreneurs, of course, which might be very troublesome on the other hand. So what else? I think curiosity.
Yeah.
Is important. Curiosity for people, curiosity for the field you're working within, and also for curiosity around business, like economics, marketing, things like that. Because you have your fingers into every pot in a way, in the kitchen. You need to. And to be able to expand the company, you need to get your fingers out of these pots and rely on other persons. And that's extremely difficult, I would say.
To let go.
To let go. I think that's why maybe I haven't expanded. I haven't taken on people to work for me, being employed by me, because I'm thinking of that's a responsibility I don't want to take. But it depends on the business you're in. If you're more like building up like a system designer or acoustic designer or things like that, you can expand and have people that could AutoCAD or could write things or could do the accounts and things like that. But I haven't. I have an external accountant, and as I said earlier, I bring in expertise from people I know.
Yeah. When you need them.
When I need them. I think a company's hardest period is when you're doing a generation shift. It's one of the hardest way. That transition to handing over to your sons and daughter or cousins or nieces or whatever it is, and trusting them and letting go of your baby, so to say. But in my case, the only thing I can hand over is my own knowledge side. I usually say that I don't think people call Molb Limited. They call Mikael Olsson. So in my case, my product is my work hours and my experience.
Yeah. The last question is, what advice do you have for someone who's starting out in their career as an audio consultant? Do you have any final words of wisdom?
Audio consultants are very few, at least the type of audio consultants as I am, because I'm not bound by any agreement with. I don't sell equipment. I don't favorize a brand. I don't work as a salesperson for anyone. I try to be as neutral as possible. And to be able to do that, you need a customer base that trusts you. And I truly believe that is an advantage for me, that they can bring me in and I can do like a business or a study of brands and come up with which one they should buy. Because, I mean, I worked for 15 years or 17 years within broadcasting before I went and started my own company, or at least full time. So to be able to start from scratch, I think you should work within a company who actually sells equipment or are system designers, or work at within broadcasting or music or film or whatever.
Yeah.
You should start with having the experience, and because then you also understand the customers a little bit, their work effort they put in, and what time they have, so to say.
And with that, we are done. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this talk on carving out a freelance career as an audio and film consultant with Mikael Olsson. You can follow Mikael on LinkedIn, the link to which can be found in the show notes. We've also summarised a lot of the key points made by Mikael on the blog post for this episode. If you're enjoying this podcast, feel free to subscribe wherever you're tuning in from. You can also leave questions or suggestions via the contact form on our website, 99projectspodcast.com. The 99 Projects podcast was produced, edited, and mixed by David Richardson, and music by Jen Erickson. We'll be back next Tuesday with our guest, Nicholas Dahlqvist, who discusses his work with AI in audio and video projects. See you then.